The people who show up for the last panel are the heavy hitters. So what we're hoping is that means you're going to bring a lot of heat when it comes to questions and interactivity as we go through this pretty interesting, what we hope is a pretty interesting panel focused on really how do we set our expectations around the future of premium media over the next 3 to 5 year horizon. So we've got a great group of panelists here today. And as we start to sort of take our way down this path, first we should probably have everyone introduce themselves.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I'm Tony Peterson. I'm with Viacom. I sit in the central group of Viacom. We work with all of the Viacom brands, including MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, Country Music Television, Spike TV, and many more. So I manage two groups. One is the applications group, and the other is TV Everywhere. So in the last few years, we've released over 300 applications on many different platforms. It's been a pretty wild ride, and the fun keeps coming.
Hi, I'm Greg Philpott. I'm the founder and CEO of mDialogue. And mDialogue is a stream management company, and we help some of the largest broadcasters and service providers in North America manage, measure, and deliver uniquely addressable advertising into their on-demand, live, and linear programming. And it's a combination of cloud-side ad insertion and lightweight SDKs for measurement and advanced advertising.
Yeah, how you doing? Dominic DiMeglio, head up video distribution and operations at CBS Interactive. I focus on our ad-supported distribution through our CBS Audience Network, as well as our electronic sell-through business, so working with partners like iTunes for download to own. And I focus on all the brands at CBS Interactive, but most specifically on our entertainment, sports, and news properties.
As it's John Pacino, I work at the NHL, lead up user experience and design across all digital products. Currently supporting a lot of broadband applications, connected devices, iPad, iPhone, tablets, and making sure that we're serving content to the fan, stats, highlights, live video, and making a great experience for all hockey fans.
Cool. Thanks, guys. And so my name is Andrew Grant, and I'm the Senior Manager of Online Services for Dolby Laboratories. Most of you may know us because we have our little Dolby logo pretty much on every connected device that plays back premium video and premium audio. So, guys, I want to open up just with sort of a question that each one of you can take your proverbial whack at, which is that if we think about where we are, it's 2016. We have a slightly different universe, right? We have really LTE networks are pervasive. Content delivery over IP has become the norm. And we're living in an environment in which we effectively have a known endpoint to which every stream is delivered. And that creates an entirely different set of challenges around the personalization of that content flow. I was wondering if each of you could take a few minutes to sort of talk a little bit about your respective company's vision for what that presents to media companies or to advertisers or brands as you start to architect towards that particular sort of circumstance.
Yeah, I'll have a crack at that. I think we're living in a fantastically exciting time. Don't know how many of you saw the launch of Xbox One yesterday. Really exciting and really exciting platform. Mobile devices are getting unbelievably capable as far as the quality of the screens, the quality of the video we can stream to those applications, the personalization of those devices, just the feature set of the devices is unbelievable right now. So, Viacom is a very diverse company. Diverse in our workforce, we're very proud of that, diverse in the content that we produce. And so our goal is to be on every platform, every device, with the content that our fans love to see. So that's a big challenge because there's a lot of fragmentation devices, there are new platforms coming on all the time. It's a big challenge to approach all of that diversity in the right way. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's very expensive. We're putting a lot of thought into how to build applications for all of these different platforms in some sort of efficient way, because it's not just building the applications in the first place, it's the maintenance of those applications. There are new platforms coming all the time, there are new operating systems dropping for those platforms all the time. Every time a new platform drops a new operating system, we have to go through QA all of our applications, probably do some modifications. Apple's WWDC is coming up in a couple of weeks. There's talk around the web of some really exciting changes coming to iOS, which is great. It'll be far more capable as an operating system and far more impressive. But also means for us, we'll probably need to go back and look at the 280 odd titles that we have on iOS and go through those and modify the applications and bring them up to speed with whatever's being offered as far as the look and feel and the feature set of that operating system. So, well, it's exciting times. It's also a bit of a reality check that you need to really think about how you approach all these different platforms, how you approach all these applications, and not just think about how you're going to approach them today, but what your plan is for the next 5 years, because you can really dig yourself into a deep and expensive hole.
So some of the things that Tony mentioned there really hit home for what we're trying to do and how we see things kind of playing out. And it's that complexity that programmers and operators, everyone is facing right now is a real problem. But it's also this kind of interesting opportunity. So one of the things, from a trend perspective, is pushing as much of the logic up into the cloud and out of the client allows you to have this ability to really look at all of this heterogeneous environment that before was just, you had for 60 years a broadcast, so went one direction to one standardized device. And then now we're at this interesting intersection now where we have this distribution method, TCP/IP, where it has an inherent back channel. So how are you going to kind of solve for the complexity of every device is different, which is it's the IP world and hasn't changed and will probably continue. And then, but also leverage the fact that now you have this rich data set that you can really personalize the stream. And, to crystal ball that, I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but I do know those two intersections of the complexity, but using data to drive value for the advertiser or the subscriber model is definitely going to play out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with that. I think, companies like Greg's are really sort of helping, publishers be able to scale more quickly. As Tony said, it is very expensive to develop for all those platforms, especially when you have a ton of brands to represent. And I think we probably, another area for us that we're also seeing as a challenge, especially working with a lot of broadcast content, is getting measurement in all of those places. That's going to be a really critical one for us over the next few years. And I think that'll also go a long way into sort of unlocking content for us to distribute.
Yeah, at the NHL, personalization has been a big priority for us going forward, and taking use of the data that we're able to get from either fans consuming our content or the data about specific games or the stream that's coming in. And we're looking at a different approach than what Tony is. We can't be on every device, but with being smart with our resources and our experiences and being on the right ones first and doing those experiences really well, personalizing the content, personalizing the experience. So if we know you're a fan of a favorite team, make sure that we're personalizing and giving you content that you'd want to consume, that you're going to consume more on. You're going to increase your time spent viewing. And then, it's also looking at that and seeing how we can turn that to advertisers. When you're on mobile devices, personalizing with your location and passing it off to the advertisers to, create some monetization around some of the other personalization data. So, it's big movement for us and, trying to integrate it across all of our devices and experiences.
So that question of data is really a pretty significant one, right? And so when you're thinking about, as a modern media company, right, you have three components of an offering, right? You've got your video, you've got your audio, and then you have this fundamentally necessary data. How do you start to so when you think about architecting a data infrastructure, it's a very different business than the one that you'd traditionally been in. What are the challenges, and I guess this is for the content guys, what are the specific challenges around building out and operationalizing a very robust data-driven business?
I mean, data is obviously very important to us, very important to every media company. And the most important data to me and my groups personally is analytics and usage data. So very important that we get solid analytics into all of our products. So we know how our users are using our products, where they're dropping off, which sections they're using, what sort of content they really value, what sort of content they don't value. So we're continually updating our products to make them the most valuable products that we can to our users. We try to have one significant data layer, one common data layer across all of our applications. We have quite a few people crunching those numbers, so they need analytics that they can pull out and work with. I guess those are the main challenges from a data perspective for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think your data and sort of is hugely important. I think for us, it's key that wherever we distribute our content, we're always getting sort of internal analytics back, and that's sort of a key tenet for us in our distribution strategy, is to make sure that we understand all of the consumption that's happening out there, and then sort of tying that all together, sort of all those disparate sources, so that you can sort of look at it holistically and understand how things are performing. That one's really key, and I think it's also important to sort of take that consumption data, marry it, and understand what's happening with the ad data, as well as sort of the content, and sort of looking at the three pieces together.
Yeah, that's for us, it's that content data is all about the data coming from the rinks. We're all about live content and around the game, and we're getting a ton of data that's coming from the rinks to create an infrastructure that can support that experience and provide it in almost real time. So there, whether it's trying to sync it with your TV or sync it with other experiences, it takes a lot of work into getting it right and to not create spoilers. No one wants to see an alert before that actually happens. So it's not only taking the analytics, which is extremely important to us, but it's also the data that helps drive these experiences and trying to marry them all.
Yeah, and I think there's third-party data out there also that we're really trying to tap into. Example being, there's some really rich social data, tapping into the Twitter fire hose as an example. And we've been testing things out, trying to understand, are there correlations between sort of social chatter and social mentions and video consumption, and trying to understand, could that help you identify which clips of a certain show may perform best, and those types of things. So I think there's a lot out there, and we're trying to figure out what works, what can be a real helpful tool in our publishing strategy, and being able to deliver a great experience for the users. But I think we're still in the sort of learning and experimental phase.
So while I didn't bring a tinfoil hat, these questions of data, they do seem to indicate at least some emphasis on instantiating trust and maintaining the integrity of a user's privacy, right, from an audience member. So some of that is, I guess, to some extent, and Greg, this is probably very much in your alley as well, which is how do, once we know much more, driven by data, about the context of a user's experience, what is the opportunity that sort of creates for advertisers and programmers, and how do you go about creating trust as sort of the underlayment of that particular one-to-one relationship with an audience member?
So one of the things that we're seeing, particularly when it comes to delivery of linear television, authenticated linear television on IP-connected devices. So you are authenticated, and now the service provider has been authenticated, and the broadcaster knows as well who you are. So one of the things that we're seeing, taking that information that's being gathered, so we know the device that's being watched on, we know whether it's on Wi-Fi or LTE or 3G, the resolution and all. There's a bunch of machine information, if you will, that gets gathered up. And then, of course, we know this is about, it's about the content, stupid. So you have all of the content. You know what time of day they're watching it, or if it's time shift, if it's on demand, what they're watching there. And we also know if it's maybe throwing the signal from the iPad to the living room screen. All of that content data, machine data, and then location data, that gets all aggregated up. But you need to use that in a way, and it's premium content, or at least that's the intersection we play in. And that informs the advertising that gets presented in a very big way. But it also can inform how the content is being presented and how that's getting personalized. So we kind of look at the world as we're there to try to individualize the stream. And do that in a data-driven way, and do it in a respectful. I mean, the data passes through our systems into the owner of it, which is the content provider or the service provider, and then they use that data to enhance their audience. So their goal is to drive those audience numbers and yield the highest possible revenue from that ad break, because it's an informed ad break now. We've seen conquest style ads. So if they know you're on an iPad or on a late model iPhone, then Samsung is probably very interested in presenting an ad there. And that would be an example of a machine data driven type of advertising that the user didn't have to do anything. So where you get into the heavily into the trust is if you're asking the user to take an action, you need to be making sure that that action, that information they're providing is in a trusted relationship, because then you'll lose it forever if you make a mistake there. And an example that we see there, if they want to tweet about that episode or that goal that just happened, then they're taking an action. You provided the mechanics for them to do that, and that's driving that engagement and everything, but you did it in an honest, trusted way. Would be an example.
Yeah. And as a programmer or as a rights holder, I mean, Tony, what what's the obligation put on someone like Viacom to instantiate that trusted relationship with an audience member? It's a different construct than before.
Yeah, I mean, I think all I'd say about that is we're very transparent about what we do with our users' data. We have privacy policies attached to every product that we have. And so, yeah, we're very upfront. I guess there's always a trade-off between, you know, giving a company data and the quality of programming, personalized programming and personalized advertising that you get from that company. And so it's up to the user to decide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important for us. You know, we absolutely have to be transparent, but we want to encourage the users and have them understand, like, you know, we'll be able to deliver a more personalized content experience and more personalized ad experience, and certainly that, I think, you know, everyone sort of wins in that situation. The advertisers are happier because they feel like their ads are sort of reaching the audience they're looking for. I think the users are certainly happier when the experience, you know, speaks to them a little bit more strongly.
Yeah, I think it's important to find that balance between, you know, that producing content for personalized content for the fan or the advertisement. You don't want to freak a user or a fan out. You know, you don't want to constantly overload them with advertising and marketing initiatives after they've given you personalized info. But you know, it's giving them content that maybe they didn't know existed before, or as we, you know, create new highlights or new articles that, you know, get buried on a site when you're trying to, you know, manage 30 different teams, showing it to them and normally they wouldn't view it, but also taking advantage of knowing that their team is, you know, Rangers or whatever, and saying, like, here, come buy some shop items or buy some direct-to-consumer products. So it's a balance that you have to fine line.
And when you're, John, that actually raises another issue. You guys have been really, really sort of exemplary in the way that you've personalized the relationship with the audience, with the fan, particularly as you move across from arena into the television experience, into the second screen experience, into the gameplay experience. Can you talk about sort of how NHL really optimizes across those different platforms to instantiate and enhance that personalized relationship with the fan?
Yeah, I mean, we see, you know, EA in particular as NHL 14, and as they're creating products is a huge opportunity for us to deliver a personalized experience to that fan. It's not just about, you know, who your favorite team is and being able to play that team in their season and whatnot, but it's providing content associated with that that they probably wouldn't normally view otherwise. You know, trying to convert that hardcore gamer who's on, you know, your gaming devices and you're playing your games, and converting them and getting them over to your products. And you know, I think some of the new gaming devices that are coming out from Sony and Microsoft, I think will really allow us to create an experience around that to introduce our content a lot easier than it was before. So it's not as force-felt. You know, so I can play a game, but I can still either watch via Game Center Live or see the stats or the highlights that are coming in real time of my favorite team. So it's trying to distribute all that personalized data across all of our platforms and creating experiences around that.
Got it. And so to some extent, you're sort of creating a very different and enhanced multi-platform event as sort of you move from platform to platform, specific to go and drive a particularly optimized experience for the end user.
Yeah.
So Dominic, we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of sort of creating, you know, the challenge for a programmer, particularly in a linear model that's increasingly time shifted and does rely on cloud storage for DVR, that it's harder to go and create those sort of water cooler style events. Yeah. How does CBS sort of see the evolution of, you know, or the interplay between social platforms and that sort of event creation?
Sure. I mean, I think probably for us the one area where we've really focused the last few years is around our live events, and we've, you know, felt really good about some of the things that we've seen, particularly around the Grammys and the Super Bowl, where you know, they're the top 3 most social events on TV. And it's been, you know, a lot of it's natural, particularly around something like the Super Bowl, but you know, you take an award show like the Grammys, and it's very integrated throughout the show in terms of calls to action, hashtags. We have had Paulie Perrette for the last few years be our social media reporter, so she's behind the scenes tweeting and sort of talking about what's going on and doing interviews and creating content for CBS.com, sort of that accompaniment experience, and then also layering in sort of apps around that. And so you're trying to create sort of a 360-degree experience that steps outside and makes the broadcast come to life. And that includes also some lead up to that. So for something like the Grammys, we start with the Grammy nomination show in November. We launched something called Gig of a Lifetime, where bands are competing to sort of get onto the Grammys, and we've had them perform like during the pre-show and things like that. So you're trying to sort of make it come to life and really sort of want people to tune in and drive to that event. So I think that's key. With the linear programming, what we're trying to do is is also make that more interactive. So, we've done things like tweet weeks over the past few years where during the broadcast of a show, the talent will tweet with fans and answer questions and sort of ask trivia and those types of things. And each one of those has grown substantially, and so that's been a big success for us. And then I think probably maybe one of the last pieces is also we have a CBS Connect app, which will be merging with our main app. But what that does is create that sort of second screen experience with content that's timed to the broadcast. And Andrew, one of the things we talked about is, we know that people are time shifting out there, and so it's an audio sync. And so what we've done is made it and enabled it so that you can get that ancillary content timed, even if you're time shifting and watching with your DVR. You fire it up, and it's in sync with the playback.
That's very cool. Yep. So, Tony, how does Viacom sort of respond to a similar set of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, second screen's been really exciting for us for a few years now. Similarly around big events, around the VMAs. We've worked pretty closely with Twitter for a few years now. We've had the Twitter tracker. We've done some interesting sort of Twitter visualizations on the web, so showing where stars were tweeting from actually within the auditorium and showing their tweets, which is pretty interesting stuff. The additional platforms give us really exciting opportunities, and I guess looking at the theme of this discussion is like looking into the future. A few things that we've been doing recently for VMAs, giving people on different mobile devices, different camera angles, backstage, in the green room, which is all pretty exciting stuff. I mean, this is access that no one but the actual people involved in the VMAs had access to, until last year. So that stuff's really exciting. I think, looking forward, really exciting when you look at wearable computing, things like Google Glass. I mean, the different camera angles that we can offer at an event like the VMAs or looking to sporting events. I mean, that stuff's getting really cool and really exciting to think that you could choose from 1,000 different camera angles, or you could choose a certain celebrity and view the whole event from their perspective. I think that's really cool stuff and stuff that is really exciting for us.
That is very cool.
Yeah, and I mean, for us, we have over 1,200 events a year, so we have to create a system and an ecosystem that can kind of turn on autopilot and can, night after night, nights that there's 15 games, create the same experience. And, we have a couple of different second screen options. We have a really engaged, second screen with pre-play where you can watch a game, and as things happen on TV, the app is actually syncing to what's happening in the broadcast, and you can select who's going to win the next face-off, who's going to score the next goal. And really for that lean-forward user who's really engaged into the game and wants to play along as they're watching, give them an opportunity to kind of have that. But also, hockey's a pretty fast game. There's not natural breaks. Providing that user who wants to lean back a little bit, follow Twitter, see who's other games that are going on, the stats that are happening in that game, provide a couple different options for the fan. And then you have the fan who doesn't want to do anything and is trying to figure out how do we convert that fan into the one who's, whether it's even the lean back on our NHL Game Center app or get them into engaging more with our more engaging products.
So you have to build the infrastructure to be able to go and allow that thing to happen over time.
Yeah, over and over and over again. And then, we activate a little bit more around our more bigger events like the Winter Classic and our tentpoles, probably similar to you guys with VMAs with different angles and your sideline reporters for doing the social aspect of it too.
So the theme is really about control being given to the user, right? So that you're essentially architecting your own production feed. So what does that create, Greg, in terms of the advertising opportunity there when it comes to second screen? There's a great line from this guy Hardy Tankersley at Fox. He's always on panels about second screen. He said, "This is also kumbaya because no one's making money on this yet." Right? And then so as soon as someone starts making money, it's not going to be so nice anymore. Yeah. So what are the opportunities for unique addressables inside of the second screen space? And how do you do it in such a way that it doesn't disrupt the sort of incumbent relationship between the advertiser and the brand?
Right.
And the programmer, rather. Sorry.
I mean, the first thing is all of this personalization, and it's kind of interesting that it's really taking off initially on sports, news, and basically the category of live. You do have an engaged audience, so we'll be looking back in a couple of years at the interesting stuff that we tried, hit and miss, and a little throwing some spaghetti in the wall, and see what sticks. But it has a lot to do with getting the user engaged because you're actually getting information then. Right? And particularly if they're authenticated. That's really the authenticated or the user who said, I'm Greg Philpott and I'm watching this is a holy grail for a brand. Right? And it's also creating just a ton of data as well. Because, I mean, it's a temporal medium. You're collecting all that information as they're watching, they did this on Twitter, they did that. So that correlation, it's early days, but it's adding a lot of value. One of the things that, from a second screen perspective and how we are looking at things, these IP devices, if you're delivering linear over IP, this can be turned into, this can start off as a first screen, and then you throw it through an Apple TV to the living room, and now this is the second screen, and that's the first screen. And so that interplay, that mix is really going to be happening a lot. I mean, no one knows what the ultimate set-top box is going to be, but technically today, it's a smartphone could be the most powerful set-top box we'll ever see. It's certainly the one we have the closest personal relationship with. I'm sure most people, top 3 things you probably do when you wake up in the morning includes a phone. So that becomes very interesting as well. And so brands want that connection, they want to see that advertising arrive at the right place at the right time to the viewer, so that they can make a transaction. And that also brings in the things like Samsung Wallet or Apple's Passbook. The delivery of a value prop to the user during that cereal commercial to have $2 off or something along those lines is something we see is really interesting, because all of a sudden you went from the traditional television to now we've got the commercial that's there to engage. The brand just wants you to know about that cereal, let's say, and then you have a user opt-in, and that opt-in sticks with the phone, and it's of course geo-aware while you go to the store, and says, hey, remember when you were watching that show, you took that coupon, and now it's available. That traceability is certainly a holy grail for any consumer packaged goods or even consumer electronics vendor.
That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, in sports, we're trying to take advantage of the natural breaks in a game on these second screens, and how do we give our partners and our sponsors an opportunity to present advertisements when there's a TV timeout or there's a break in the action, and trying to experiment with some syncing with TV. So when a partner ad shows up on the network, be able to provide a rich media unit within the second screen experience, so a user can then interact with it. So again, it's kind of taking the second screen to the advertiser as well.
Yeah.
Got it. That's, the other aspect there, it seems, in terms of challenges, is, like you said, with the mobile phone, we have a very clear functional fluency with the device, what it does, how it works, how to load an app.
Yeah.
We're getting into a domain in which there's a lot of complexity being introduced to the user. So there's almost an educational burden that's being borne by the content owner as you sort of teach. You have to go out and teach and message appropriately so that the audience knows how to engage and knows how to exploit all of this technical capacity to generate the data that does drive that increasingly personalized advertisement. What do you think, Tony, in terms of the obligations on a programmer to undertake some, what share of the burden falls on the programmer to go and execute against that educational problem?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it comes down to developing applications that have a great user experience. There are a lot of applications out there that are overwhelmingly complex, and I guess just in using an application, you shouldn't need to educate the consumer at all. They should get it immediately, and when you think about the applications that you really enjoy and love and click to straight away, they're usually pretty simple, single-minded applications, and I think we've all developed overly complex applications and learned a lesson from that. I think part of the education move that you're talking about could relate to us in the way that we're offering different sets of content on different devices and on different platforms. So we need to educate our consumers or our users into why they can't get a certain TV show on an authenticated application until 2 days after it was on TV. And the onus is on us to explain that sort of that strategy and why that happens. Hopefully simplified a little, because it's usually a really complex reason, but
Just get 7 or 8 Hollywood lawyers to explain when doing
exactly. But that comes down to our group to build applications and explain what the content strategy is and when people can get content, and also when the content's disappearing. So and we can use that to a user's advantage. I mean, alerts that clearly explain when a piece of content is appearing on an application and when it's disappearing from an application can be really, really useful to a user and get them to consume that content at a certain time. There's also opportunity to create events around windowing. So a premiere on iPhone, for example, or a premiere on an Android tablet. So that's kind of exciting for users because they can be part of something a little bigger than watching the content on their own somewhere. And it's great for us, and it's attractive for advertisers and sponsors as well.
And then Dominic, when you think about it in terms of your distribution partners, I mean, if you're moving content across those different distribution outlets, what becomes the obligation of the sort of sub-distributor to be able to go and commit to that education over time?
Well, I mean, I think for us first is the obligation for us is to educate, maybe it's not the right word, but sort of keep informed our partners so that they understand all the content. I think, we put out, I think would say, a couple hundred clips a day of content across all our verticals. And that's all getting, if not all of that's getting pushed out to our distribution partners. So, to be able to sort of let them know, like, here's the things you should be focusing on, or this fits with, what you're doing in this category. We have to be experts in the content. We have to be experts in our partners' sites and audiences so we can try to make those matches because, it's not only us, but there's just been an explosion of content out there. And so discoverability is certainly a challenge. And so, we want to work with those partners so that they, feel like something's a good match and they want to be able to promote it and help sort of drive the awareness that's out there.
And then those issues of discovery, I mean, fundamentally, what are sort of the technical challenges that underpin really developing those kinds of really integrated discovery offers? And it's a metadata problem mostly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we take a lot of care in terms of the metadata, and I think we're doing more and more around that. So, as an example, we're programming themes around a lot of our clip content. Categorizing things across multiple shows, and sort of organizing it in theme, or just metadata about who's in the who are the actors, who are the creators, those types of things. What type of scene it is, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're really trying to find good ways for us to then be able to sort of aggregate it in different types of collections and playlists like that.
Gotcha. So that aspect of, what's interesting to me to some extent is I'm trying to deliver the right application experience to the right device, I'm looking at distribution partners that have specific attributes associated with their audience. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of listening that has to happen in order to be able to sort of figure that out. What, from an organizational standpoint, how do you structure to be able to, pick up all of that sort of, what is the nature of a particular YouTube audience or a sub-audience of YouTube, and be able to program effectively for those in sort of a micro fashion?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two approaches. I think there's the distribution partners who have an editorial bent to them. Some of the ones we work with, like a Yahoo or an MSN. So, understanding their audience, understanding what content over time has worked on their platform, really helps us program for that. And I think on the YouTube side, it's a lot more hand-to-hand combat. Metadata is super important. Titling, tagging, I mean, all those things are important. Trying to figure out what the right channel strategy is to be able to launch, with have your sort of larger channel be able to help launch sub-channels and those types of things, and really, focusing on subscribers today. I mean, that's the one thing we're doing there, just because then you have sort of a promotional platform built in where they're alerted to the content that you're publishing. It's in their feeds, it's in the emails and those types of things. So you're really trying to develop a subscriber relationship there.
Gotcha. And how does that differ, John, for NHL, particularly as you're sort of moving across, again, like the different spheres of the business?
Yeah, we, just an example with YouTube, we look at YouTube as a way to, expose our content to a fan base that may not be on our site today. So it's like using partnerships and whether it's with Yahoo, NBC, or some of the other ones that we have out there, trying to expose our content to fans and being smart about it, not being able to deliver entire experience over there, but use it and using the metadata and the annotations and then delivering them back to the experience to consume our content. So it's being smart about, like I said, the channels and the content that you push out there. Give them everything, they may never come back. And, so it's just
but I think it
smart programming.
Hit a key point in that it's a way for us to sort of reach audiences in new places and making sure that, we're helping drive awareness because, not everyone's going to come to your site.
Got it.
Yeah.
So sort of switching directions a little bit, just because of this sort of nature of this audience. You, Tony, mentioned a little bit about sort of the cost of getting to scale and building a unified development environment. So as you sort of face off against this really increasingly fragmented world, and moreover, we start to see new interfaces sort of come to market, right? Things like Leap Motion and gestural interface. How do you manage costs associated with like building for scale?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think we've been doing a lot of discovery around new platforms and how to build most efficiently for new platforms. Every platform wants you to take advantage of every little bell and whistle that that platform offers, and particularly the unique ones, and it makes sense. You know, they've spent a lot of time, a lot of smart people thinking about cool stuff that they can put in that platform and different gestures and different ways that you can control a cursor. You know, stuff like leave motion and connect. And I think it comes down to this. You could build an individual application for each platform, and you could include every unique feature on every platform, but that would be a really, really expensive thing to do, a very expensive proposition. So I think it comes down to it's another trade-off, and that is looking at, can I group platforms into one client? Can I look at these 5 platforms and say, they're all HTML5, sure, they all use a slightly different version of JavaScript, but can I pile these 5 platforms? What sort of user base does that give me? And how would I build most efficiently for those 5 platforms? Which platforms would I potentially leave off because my viewers just aren't on those in significant numbers? And it's sometimes hard. Our strategy all along has just been get one product onto a platform and see how it goes. Believe it or not, biz dev people from certain platforms will tell you things that aren't completely true.
No, come on. You can't be serious.
I know, I'm cynical. But you don't know until you actually get on a platform, start playing on there, seeing what sort of response you get, seeing what sort of usage you get. I mean, we've been shocked when we've gone onto platforms by the hundreds of users that we've got. And we've also gone onto other platforms, and one recent example has actually doubled the video views for one of our businesses. So that's pretty crazy that you could, you know, I mean, and a great investment. So there are some platforms that you want to go in and all in and make sure that you're using every feature of that platform because it makes sense financially. There are other platforms that you may want to group together and maybe dumb down the experience a little to not take advantage of every bell and whistle on that platform. But it allows you to build for a bunch of different platforms efficiently. So that's sort of been our approach, and it's working pretty well.
Very cool.
And on our side, we've taken this approach of trying to put as much business logic in the cloud and have these lightweight, if you will, stream event listeners that are our SDKs across a Roku or an Apple TV or iOS, Android, Xbox. And because we manipulate the stream manifest, the information about the stream, these listeners are listening there. And we've done the same thing as far as grouping them. Which ones can handle, for example, timed metadata or ID3 tag information. And those ones, in our world, we group them on 2 main areas. What they can listen for and trigger events. And then the second category is what level of advanced advertising can take place. So there's a first and second screen, but there's actually can be even a third screen, and that's the overlay that you can put anytime that you're watching. In our world, that we're focused on advertising. So there's a web view, transparent one that can sit if it's iOS or perhaps Android, and then if the user taps on this or takes an action or there's a call to action, then that can bring a whole degree of interactivity that's a layer on top of the video. So it gets a little kind of Russian doll-ish as far as
nested, yeah.
It gets a little nested, but if properly done, you can manage all of those scenarios so that if you know it's Roku and I can't do an overlay there, then please don't send that information down because it's of no use to me.
So that actually raises one other question, right? So if we're looking forward to 2016 and I'm watching a stream on a train, there's some awareness that I'm based on habits of patterns that I'm probably commuting.
Yeah.
I'm watching this particular piece of content. That there's historical data about clickstream data that says I'm in the market for certain products. If we assume that we can solve the technical complexity associated with that, to some extent there's a creative bottleneck also, which is that ad content needs to be created for those specific niches. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, and then maybe from the programmer's perspective, speak a little bit about whether that bottleneck is real, and what does the nature of video advertising sort of look like as we move out across that horizon. Hopefully, it's less intrusive.
Well, the bottleneck is definitely there.
Yeah.
There isn't, they're not creating, the agencies and the brands aren't creating an ad for each one of us.
Right.
But there still is enough combinations where you can get into hundreds of thousands of combinations based on you know, where you're watching, what you're watching it on type of thing. Well, one of the things that, you know, an agency will typically, let's take the auto industry, they'll do a 30-second, you know, really high production for the vehicle. But then on the microsite, they'll have anywhere from 15 seconds to 5-minute clips about the car and to give more information. So now what we're seeing with some agencies is that when they're doing their planning and pitching, you know, the brand, they're not just saying, hey, we'll do the standard, you know, $800,000 or $3 million 30-second car spot, and then all this other, you know, throwaway stuff. They're actually doing a lot of thought into, well, the segmentation of the audience and where these ads could be placed, because that's also part of what the buy plan that was done 6 months earlier that
Right.
pondered that. It's definitely early days, but we will see production habits changing. And this does go on today to some degree. The local cable avail is a localized ad. Another classic in the auto category, you have the spot, and then at the end you'll have the lease information. Well, that lease information, that's in the industry, that's a tag. That there's hundreds of those, because of all the different lease deals with all the different dealerships across the country. So right there, if you have 4 or 5 different ads, and then you're going to programmatically stick these tails on that you can now do in an IP world, is an example of localizing or getting some degree of addressability, but again, it's very early
Yeah,
days.
I mean, and there are advertisers out there doing things like that. I think, you know, probably in the sort of quick serve category in terms of food, I think one really good example is localizing the content, but not only by geo, but by time based. So if you're, you know, in New York and it's noon, you're getting an ad with information about where the local establishment is, as well as sort of lunch food, but you might be getting a breakfast sandwich in, you know, say San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I do think that is, we're starting to see more and more of that take place, where you're really trying to be addressable to both geo and time.
So it becomes it's a much less invasive and sort of much more, and we think about that personalized experience, advertising that really knows what I want when I want it and gives me an offer that makes sense to me. I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right? Anytime.
I mean, Google last week were talking about developments in Android. So they don't just know that it's 11 a.m. and that I'm in Battery Park City. They know that I'm on a bicycle because they can tell by GPS and accelerometer that I'm moving at the speed of a bicycle or running really fast.
Really fast.
So I think that's getting really exciting. I mean, even moving away from my job, I think personally that's really exciting and kind of mind-blowing, because it adds a lot of context around what you're doing at a certain time. And Google's always been very smart in knowing that you're searching for something, so you're actually seeking out something. But now they know that, you know, you're actually moving somewhere, doing a certain activity and heading in a certain direction. I think, you know, for all of us, that can only lead to better targeted advertising. And I guess for media companies, it'll allow us to offer highest CPMs, which is fantastic.
Which is fantastic. And if you're at 30,000 feet and at 700 miles an hour on the flight path to Las Vegas, then the advertising can be informed that way too. I mean, you will see that. That's my prediction.
Yep.
You got to throw one out there.
So that was the final. We got about 3 minutes left. I wanted to get some, you know, Tony, you sort of gave it to me, but if you guys have sort of paint for the audience sort of that image of what it is to be a sophisticated media consumer in 5 years. And what's the nature of that experience?
I think you'll be consuming. So the art form will have changed a little bit because creative folks will have figured out how they can incorporate the audience in a more meaningful way, and news and sports and live events will be where the first ideas get sprung out.
So the reality of a transmedia experience actually comes to fruition. Yeah.
And what you're going to be watching it on will be probably much different. You know, something you'll be wearing most likely, and I really think you'll be able to take, then get back to just how it works. The brand wants you to engage with what they're trying to inform you about, and that conversation will be things where you can you'll be opting in with a blank or a yes and then the value will be delivered to your device and go to your Amazon locker the next day.
Just, don't mention the wet interface.
Yeah. And I think it'll be our job to program accordingly. So, if you're watching something on your glasses, so to speak, I mean, I think you're going to serve a different piece of content and sort of, and lead with, you're going to lead differently, I think, in each area and try to make the experience best suited for what the user's more likely to want at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, take a look, I'm trying to find our biggest assets, our players, and getting that user closer to that game that's, it's happening in real time. Whether it's someone skating around with Google glasses on or, a celebrity in the stands, the example. We'll be able to create great experiences for whatever platforms are out there, but it's, delivering that content that the fans want that's going to keep them engaged. That's really exciting.
That's awesome. Well, I think that wraps up the time. I want to thank all of you very much for spending the time to share these sort of visions with us. Hopefully it was educational and entertaining for everybody else out there. And until next time, I think this is the end of Streaming Media East for this time. Yeah, please.
I have one question. You guys have been very articulate about all the benefits of OTT in the 2016 timeframe. Can one of you articulate for me what the use case scenario is in which traditional linear broadcasting delivers a superior user experience in 2016 over OTT? Don't everyone answer.
Yeah.
Well, I think traditional linear is going to be around for all. People want to be programmed, want content programmed for them because it requires less effort to consume. And I think the biggest changes is going to be the delivery protocols or distribution technologies for the most part, and then what second, third, fourth screens that enables on top of that.
Yeah, I think for us, it's bringing linear wherever you are is going to be a big one,
Nice.
and also providing making that linear come to life, which is the things we're starting to do today.
You can deliver linear over OTT.
Right.
I'm saying, what's the role of cable?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, authentication.
Being authenticated, and if I gave the ESPN guy a hard time the other day because talking about the Watch ESPN app, and the two things that he doesn't cover are the satellite thing. There's 35 million people on it. It's like, why do I have to authenticate? Why don't you take my $5 a month because I want to watch ESPN on my phone? So where does that start to shift in terms of?
Is this another telegraph telephone thing?
Most likely,
I mean, realistically.
realistically.
I mean, the cable, the MSOs, they're great ISPs now.
Yeah.
And they could shift their business over to delivering OTT video too.
Yeah.
I'm just having a hard time figuring out where the linear model, in broadcasting, what is the scenario in which it delivers some sort of a superior user experience, and I can't figure it out.
I think there's definitely value in a well-programmed linear experience. We have people who are very good at putting that stuff together, and it's hugely successful and very entertaining. So I'd agree that the likely scenario is you'll be able to get a linear feed in many different places. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? You did it. Thanks, guys. Very much.